Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Parker.
I'm Steve Mould.
I'm Helen Arney, and this is a podcast of unnecessary detail. Or is it?
It is, but it is a different type of episode. This is one of 3 we're doing this series where we're going to bring you some of our favourite bits from our recent live shows, an evening of unnecessary detail.
I can't believe it actually happened. We actually did some live shows in front of actual people.
Yay!
It's been more than 2 years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
The best part is we got to invite our favourite nerds and comedians. They came along. They told us all this stuff in immense detail.
And we recorded that detail so we can put their stuff in this podcast. And oh my goodness, you were in for a treat. In this episode, we've got Dr Rohin Francis on how the human body is a total disaster. Comedian Rosie Wilby on how breakups don't have to be a total disaster. As well as, of course, some performance maths from me.
Yeah, I'm doing some, well, I suppose some people would call it maths as well.
Some people.
Yeah,
I'm personally very suspicious.
Yeah, you should be. Let's start this episode with something from our very own experimental maestro. He's in action. He's live on stage. It's Steve Mould.
Hey! So I figured out how to hack into my car, and I thought it would be a good idea to explain to 500 strangers how I did it. And because I'm parked just around the corner, it's the NPC. I'm not going to tell you which numbered bay it is, though. So you can try and figure it out. So yeah, it's interesting. And by the way, it's not one of these fancy cars where you can unlock it with your phone. It's a 2007 Mini Cooper. There you go, there it is. See, I've blanked out the number plate. Very savvy. I mean, the fact that I left the top down, it sort of makes the whole thing a bit mute. But Matt does have one of those fancy cars where you can unlock it with your phone. He's got a Tesla. It's all over Bluetooth. So yeah, no, the way my car unlocks is with the key, and so you press the button and it unlocks. It's not connected to the internet. It doesn't have Bluetooth. And surprisingly, the way this works, maybe it shouldn't be surprising, but it's a radio. This is a radio transmitter. And so I thought what I'll do is I'll buy one of these things. This is called a Hack RF1. It's a software-defined radio. That means you plug it into a computer and you use software to control the radio, like instead of knobs that you would use with a traditional radio. So you can use software to set the frequency that you want to listen to, and you can record and things like that. So we're going to try and do this live on stage. Right, so this is the aerial here. So I'll press record, and then I'll press the button, and then I'll press stop. Let's see if this works. Hold on. I'm going to try something really technical. Do you know what? I'm so glad it made a noise, just because it really worked for the gag, didn't it? If it was just... Let's try again. So it's not going to work with that. Hold on. Maybe it would. I don't know. No, that's not it. Do you know?
I just wanted to enjoy the moment. Would it help if everyone who's got their keys with them pushes the button at the same time?
Do you know what I'll do? I'm just going to open a saved one that I recorded earlier today. Here we go. So, there. So, right, go away. So this is the little bit that I recorded. Let's zoom in. Oh, okay, there we go. So if I zoom right in, look, it's sending like a little beep. And then it doesn't send a beep. And then like it sends a beep and then it doesn't send a beep. And it's like, so it's either on or off, basically. It's like binary. It would be like if you could hear it, it would be like a fax machine or like dial-up modem when it, but really short. It'd be like that. And if you look at it, let's zoom back out again. You can see it sends the same message 5 times. So if you took this bit here, so it's basically binary, ones and zeros. It uses something called Manchester encoding, so it's not exactly like on is 1 and off is 0, but it's basically binary. The details of the encoding don't matter, because what I can do is I can take that message from the key and then I can replay it, because this software-defined radio is also a transmitter. So you can use it to transmit. So what I can do is I can press the button, record the thing, and then go with my laptop and the radio to my car and play it, and the car should unlock. Except it's not quite that simple. In the old days, it was that simple. In the old days, basically every car had a unique code in your key, and it would transmit that code, but it would only match one car, and that car would unlock. The issue is that this method is vulnerable to something called a replay attack. So for a replay attack, what you do is you hide in the corner of the car park, in the dark, with your laptop, and you've got your hoodie up, because you're a hacker, and for some reason that your laptop screen is projecting the code onto your face. No one knows why, but it's what happens when you're a hacker. So what they do is they're hiding in the car park, they're recording your car key clicks, and then they'll pick one of you and they'll follow you home, and then they'll wait till you've gone to sleep, which sounds creepy. Because it is, they're trying to break into your car. And then they'll replay one of the car keys that they recorded, and it'll unlock your car, and they'll steal your purse. So cars don't work like that anymore. Instead, they use something called rolling codes, which basically means inside your car key, there's a list of codes. And in the car, there's the same list of codes. At this point, Matt's getting really excited by the idea that there's a spreadsheet inside his car key. In reality, it's probably not exactly like that. Instead of a list, it's going to be an algorithm that generates the codes, and it's a secret algorithm shared between the car and the computer. But essentially, it's a list. So you press the button, it sends the first code in the list to the car. That matches the first code in the car, so the car unlocks. And then crucially, that code is now dead, right? So if someone tried to replay that code, the car is not interested in that code anymore. It's onto the next code in the list. And so both the key and the car just go down the list like this, crossing them off as they go. At this point, you might be thinking, well, hold on a second. What if I'm sat at home, out of range of my car, and I'm just playing with my car key like it's a fidget toy, so you're just pressing the buttons? Because then the car key is going to be further down the list than the car. You're going to be out of sync. And that's true. So what the car does, actually, is if it receives a signal from a car key, it checks the first code on the list. If that doesn't work, it checks the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And it keeps going for quite a while, just in case you've been playing with your car key. But it doesn't keep going forever. So, if you are playing with your car key outside of the range of your car, you're basically playing Russian roulette. If you go too far, eventually it will come out of sync. You can't use the car key. Though, interestingly, there's a resync process. For my Mini, which I had to learn. You put the key in the ignition, you have to turn it to a position, and then another position, and then you take it out, and you press a sequence of buttons. Amazingly, it resyncs the two spreadsheets. Not spreadsheets. And so this is much harder to attack with a replay. For this to work, you would have to be with someone when they're not near their car and somehow persuade them to press the unlock button on their key. You make with social engineering or something, all right, mate, can you press the button? I don't know. I don't know how social engineering works, but it's something like that. Or maybe you could have a party where people put their car keys in a bowl. I don't know. That might have unintended consequences. I don't know. Interestingly, so there's a security researcher called Sami Kamkar came up with a way to hack into cars that use this rolling code system. And it's really clever. So the way it works is, so the car is listening to quite a wide range of frequencies because car keys, the temperature changes, the battery changes, the frequency isn't going to be exact on a car key. So the car has to listen to a wide range of frequencies. The car key itself might be like this frequency. So what you do is you jam a nearby frequency. So you send out a frequency that was within the range of the car, but isn't the key frequency. And that basically deafens the car. It can't hear anything because you're jamming it with this nearby signal. But at the same time, you're listening to the car key frequency, the specific car key frequency. So this might be a device that you attach to the car, right? And so the victim comes along, and they try to unlock their car. They press the unlock button, but it doesn't work. The car can't hear it because it's being jammed. But you're listening in with your device. It records the unlock code, and the victim's like, oh, that didn't work. I'll try again. So they press the button again. The device records the second press, but sends the first press to the car to unlock the car. So the victim's like, oh, it worked. That was weird. And they drive off. So you're always one key code ahead of the user because you've buffered it, basically. And so I was talking to Sami Kamkar about it, like, could we do it with my Mini? The issue is, like, the last thing someone does with their car before you want to break into it is they lock it like that. So the last code that you have in your device is a lock code. So you need to reverse engineer that into an unlock code for this roll jam attack to work. And it looks like the Mini, or 2007 Mini Cooper Cream, is not susceptible to a roll jam attack because you can't reverse engineer a lock code into an unlock code. But what I was able to do was do the replay attack on myself. So I was, unsuspecting me, sitting in my house, playing with my car key, and there was evil me with the laptop recording the key presses. And I'll just show you the result because I'm very happy with it. Yes! That's so good. I'm in my car. Amazing. Thanks very much. I'm in my car. Thank you.
So there you are. We were able to definitely prove that was live on stage, thanks to Steve Mould, making sure that strategically some things went wrong.
and traditionally.
A lot of things.
My performances at Evening of an SO Detail tend to have a thing go wrong. And it's genuinely not planned. What's interesting is a lot of the things that went wrong were just edited out of this podcast episode.
You cannot fake that kind of reality.
You can't.
That's how
fake
it was. But Steve's things weren't the only things that have gone wrong with this show, because these shows happened in April 2022 at the Bloomsbury Theatre in London, but they were first scheduled for July 2020.
Oof. Actually, some of our most patient fans had tickets since August 2019. They're the early adopters, that's what we call them. We appreciate you waiting for 2.5 years.
But it's mad. I got this tweet from someone who told me that they had to suddenly buy 2 more tickets for these shows because in 2019, when they bought their first 2 tickets, their kids weren't old enough to bring along. But by the time we got to April 2022, they were old enough and didn't need a babysitter, and they could just bring them along. It's like bringing families together.
And because their kids, had long enough to age into the show, they were also able to enjoy, just doing a segue here, folks, one of the people we invited to share their opinions about the human body.
You might have seen him on YouTube where he goes by Midlife Crisis. Yes, it's an actual real-life cardiologist in real life on stage. It's Rohin Francis.
Isn't the human body amazing? Billions and billions of cells. The wonder of DNA. The miracle of you. No, Now, take it from me, people. The human body is an absolute mess. All of you here today, C- at best, could definitely do a lot better. Something happened recently. It happens every year, actually. The latest generation of sacrificial morons did something particularly idiotic. They gained a place at medical school to become doctors. Something I did 2 decades ago and have been regretting it ever since. And at the interview, they always ask a question, why do you want to do medicine? And people trot out the same unimaginative drivel every time. 2 reasons. Number 1, I want to help people. Number 2, because I'm fascinated by the amazing human body. Now, I think anyone who knows me could have told you that the first one never really applied. But the second one I've also been learning is complete lies. Because the human body is a collection of all kinds of mistakes. And if I was going to tell you all of them, we'd be here for days. So I'm just going to give you a little sample today in a segment that I like to call parts of the body that are but aren't actually Well, while we're on the subject of small appendages, why don't we start with the most famous one that is probably responsible for more death and illness than any other apparently redundant little pocket of tissue. You know what I'm talking about. Of course, it's the left atrial appendage. Well, you thought I was going to say the appendix. I mean, the appendix gets all the headlines, but frankly is a rank amateur when it comes to the fine art of doing harm to its owner compared to the left atrial appendage. I mean, I'm not saying the appendix is innocent. It's clearly a I mean, imagine this coming at you in a dark alley outside the Bloomsbury Theatre. But it really is an amateur compared to the left atrial appendage, because appendicitis these days, you know, it's rarely fatal, it's easily treated. Often we don't even need to do surgery anymore. But the left atrial appendage is responsible for 1/4 of all strokes, so its impact is much bigger. And it does this by, it's a little finger-like structure coming off the left atrium in the heart rather than anything to do with the bowel. And if people go into an irregular heart rhythm, which is quite common as we get older, blood inside the left atrial appendage kind of starts acting a bit like a teenager. It sort of sits around doing sod all for a while, solidifies into a blood clot, and then one day says, "Mum, I want to go and see the world. I've heard about this fantastic tourist attraction that I really want to see called the brain." And it packs its bags, heads out the door, and before you know it, you're paralyzed down your left side. And cardiologists like me, we like to talk about the appendage, we obsess over it, we talk about its crenellations, its lobes, its orifice, and we classify it, and these are all real classifications, into cauliflower, cactus, windsock, and chicken wing. We'd probably get more excited about the appendage than anybody else does about any appendage. Whereas the appendix probably gets a bit of a bad rap, because the appendix, we think, actually has a role in repopulating the microbiome of the bowel, if you believe in such conspiracy theories. And so if you get a diarrheal illness, which obviously humans have done throughout our history, in the past, I guess it would have typically been due to unsanitary conditions, contaminated water. Nowadays, probably more likely a TikTok laxative challenge. And this can deplete the bowel of its bacteria, and we think that the appendix acts like a reservoir of good bacteria, good guy appendix, repopulating the bowel, but the left atrial appendage doesn't seem to have any function that we know of at all. So I think it's far worse. And if you're getting confused that the human body has quite a few appendages, both inside and out, but only one appendix, just remember it has to come from the cecal region of the bowel to be called an appendix. Otherwise, it is just a sparkling protuberance. Colds. I mean, humans get colds a lot more than other animals, as you've probably noticed. And while we share a lot of our shortcomings with our primate cousins, this is one area where we're quite unique because our facial bones are pretty different. And this occurred over evolution, if you believe in that conspiracy theory. And our brains got bigger, we became less dependent on our sense of smell, and this had a catastrophic effect on the drainage configuration of our sinuses. Plus, they look terrifying. But so the sinuses up here drain using a phenomenon that I'm pretty sure has been present for the majority of human evolution, which is gravity. And But the maxillary sinuses here, which are the biggest snot capacity, decided we're going to be different. We're going to drain upwards. So we are effectively the apple mouse of nasal structures. And, I mean, maybe that's not the most apt analogy, because you might think we're a bit more like a little teapot. If you tip yourself up, you can pour yourself out. But the problem is, with the way that the sinuses are arranged, if you tip one side, it's just going to fill the other. And even if you stand on your head, it'll fill the sinuses at the top. So, in effect, you're just trapped in a never-ending cycle of snot redistribution. So we're more like a lava lamp. There are lots of other shortcomings I'm sure you've heard of. I'll just whiz through a few. Our backs are basically made from baguettes and discarded pogs. Our knees are held together with an elastic band from Sainsbury's deli counter. Our heads are famously too big for our mothers' pelvises, meaning that hundreds of thousands of humans through history's first act has been matricide, which is particularly foolish when you think about mammals' very defining feature being what mothers do after giving birth. So this is quite a spectacular fail. And, of course, our wrists and ankles are a complete bodge of dried pieces of toast crust and a handful of Lego pieces. Well, probably not a handful, because the hand hadn't fully evolved yet. But irrespective, all of these problems can probably go under the subheading of bipedalism, which I think we can all agree was a mistake. Now, a lot of people hold up these shortcomings as evidence that there's no creator, that there's nothing intelligent about this design. But have any of you rampant evolutionists ever stopped to consider that maybe there is a God, and he's just a complete moron? Thanks very much.
Rohin Francis there, and he's got a whole YouTube channel of medicine stuff, from CPR in space to, I mean, just go and find him. He's Midlife Crisis on YouTube and social media.
I think he's actually put that whole set that he did for us at Unnecessary Detail. He's put it on his channel as a video as well. So if you want to see what a left atrial appendage actually looks like, and whether it looks like what he says it looks like, you can head over there. If his comparison wasn't graphic enough for you, just in
you said left atrial appendage really slowly there, Helen, like you were reading it.
Yeah, it's because I was really worried about saying it wrong and just saying instead.
Thank goodness we had that bleep handy. So, anyway, speaking of graphical content, I don't think we've had enough maths in this podcast yet.
I think we're fine, actually, honestly,
Yeah,
Matt.
we're
I think
all right.
we're good.
I think you're wrong.
Look, if we don't do it now, we just have to have more of it later, Steve. We should just let him do it.
Fine. Do you want a proper introduction then?
That'd be nice, actually, because what people may not realise is I'm on stage all night in the live shows doing all the intros, but I can't do my own intro because I'm already on stage, so I kind of missed out, which, a bit disappointing. So if you could do one, Steve, that'd be great.
All right, so I'll pretend I'm at the live show. Right. People of the Bloomsbury Theatre, put your hands together and welcome to the stage, even though he's been there the whole time. You might not have had enough of him already. It's Matt Parker!
So I actually get to show you something that I think is a due amount of detail. Some would say unnecessary. I think deeply, deeply interesting. And I want to start with a seemingly bizarre fun fact. Did you know? In Switzerland, trains are not allowed to have exactly 256 axles. Isn't that amazing? And now, there are two responses when you see that. Some people look at it and they're like, what? What? Why? Why 256? And other people look at it and go, 256. My old friend. Because there are so many things in computing that either stop or break at 256. Some of you may know them. I may go through some of your favorites in a moment, right? So, for example, Minecraft. They've updated this. For a long time, you couldn't build anything more than 256 blocks high. It would just stop. WhatsApp, you cannot add more than 256 people to the same group chat. You try to add 257th person, just won't let you. It used to be 100 actually, and they updated it a couple of years ago. And when they did, The Independent ran a news story which said something like, WhatsApp increases group chat to 256 people. No one is sure why they picked such an oddly specific number. And then in the online version, almost immediately appeared, edit, a lot of people have now told us why. Please stop. Right. It's because of the way computers count, right? Which is different to how humans count. But we have the same situation can occur in both scenarios. So actually, the way humans count, I've got a physical version of that right here. So I've got one of these physical counters where as you go along, you push it and it goes up by 1. And when you get to 9 on the end there, right, then the next time I push it, the 9 becomes a 0 and the other one rolls over. And it carries on. Oh, by the way, I originally just bought this as a prop to talk about this. It is strangely addictive. Right? I've been walking around the house counting all sorts of things. My wife has asked me to stop counting things 40 times. 41 times. That's a joke, by the way. She's very supportive. Now, if you spend a really long time clicking these, you can end up with a situation that looks, here we go, on the second one here. So, for the record, I've just pulled out a second counter, which is on 9,991, and despite the implied effort, the audience appear deeply underwhelmed. Invested a lot of time in this bit. So now, we're going to click up, and we're going to see what happens when we get to all 9s. Here we go, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I can feel the pressure. Here we go. 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, by the way, if you committed to the ooh too early. I was just going to say, if you miss it when it happens, just look to your right very quickly. Okay. Here we go. Stop doing visual. Okay, here we go. 5,999. Oh, yeah, thank you. For continuity purposes. 0! That's the biggest round of applause I get tonight. Okay, so once you've gone all the way up to 9,999, then it rolls over. So it goes to the next one. And so what would happen if you were using this to count, like if you were counting people like going into a venue or something, right? So you often see bouncers have these. And they'd be like, okay, in you go. There's 9,998 people in the club. In you go, 9,999. In you go, 0. There's no one in there. We must have let in some anti-people. Oh, well, 1, right? And so, very briefly, you've got a 0 reading when you shouldn't. And actually, all the values after that are, they're non-zero. So if you just care about if there's people in there or not, you're okay. But on that click, you get 0. And so we can say, on this counter, which I've got up here, you got 4 possible values. That can be any of the 10 digits. This maxes out at 9,999, and because there's only a finite number of them, when you click it one more, instead of 10,000, you get 0. So 10,000 is equivalent to 0 in this system. This is what was happening on the Swiss railways, except they weren't using 4 possible values, they were using 8, and they weren't doing this in base 10, they were doing it in binary. And so if you count all the way up in binary, eventually you hit all 1s, at which point you can't go any further, and that is the equivalent of 255. Here we go. Now, you click it one more time, rolls over to 0, which should be 256, but it's not, it's 0. So that's where 256 comes from, it's 2 to the power of 8. So as soon as you hit this, right, you get 0. So like, in Switzerland, on the train lines, they had like a counter. And each time a wheel hits the counter, it would count 1. And as the train goes by, it counts the number of axles. And these detectors would then inform the central system where all the trains were. But if a train had 256 axles exactly, as it goes by, it'll be counting like click, 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 1, 2, 1, 2, from 0. I guess that wasn't a train then. I won't tell anybody. And then means a train with 256 axles can just roam the Swiss network like some kind of ghost train, which is apparently ill-advised. And so they fixed the problem. However, this is great, because normally if you've got like a hardware issue, like not enough memory or something, you can fix that in software. It becomes a software developer's problem. And that's what they did for a long time in Minecraft. They just capped it. You just couldn't build further. It's what they still do in WhatsApp. They just won't let you do it, right? A hardware issue is solved with a software solution. In Switzerland, they didn't do that. No, they just introduced a regulation saying it's against the rules. And they're like, well, now it's against the rules. Now no one will ever do it. It's the first ever hardware problem solved with an admin solution. It's fine, we've got a regulation patch. That'll fix that, right? And there you go. I don't speak enough Swiss German to know if that rules out a train with 512 axles. Oh. Doesn't? Did someone else say it does? It does not. Really? Loophole time. Okay. I'm starting a Kickstarter. Right, so isn't that amazing, right? I had to look it up. I saw this online. I looked it up, and it's absolutely true, and that is what happened. And I got really obsessed with these examples of where 256 would cause a problem. And one of the famous ones is in Pac-Man. So Pac-Man crashes on the 256th level. What an oddly specific number. It's because in the memory, it's keeping track of the level it's on with an 8-digit binary number. However, it's not the level number that causes a problem. Once it gets to level 256, in the memory it's 0, and you're fine. You just carry on playing. What breaks is printing the fruit at the bottom. It's the decoration that causes the problem. That's why we don't believe in frills around here, right? And so what actually happens when you're playing Pac-Man, as you go through the levels, each level has a different fruit that you can collect. And as you go down the kind of menu of fruit, the word fruit becomes less and less accurate. And they appear at the bottom of the game as you go along, up until level 7. After level 7, it just shows the most 7 recent bits of fruit. So in the game code, when you're on level 256, it thinks you're on level 0, and if it was bigger than 7, it'll print 7. Below 7, it prints as many bits of fruit as the level number. You're like, well, that's fine. This is going to print 0 bits of fruit. It doesn't check the number. It prints fruit first, asks questions later. So what it does is, first of all, it prints 1 bit of fruit, then without looking at the level number, subtracts 1, and then checks to see if it's 0. Try not to skip ahead to the punchline. Technically, all my jokes can be deduced from first principles. It's considered bad audience etiquette. And so the reason they were laughing already is because if you go up to 255, you look back down to 0, the reverse happens. You go down from 0, you go back up to 255. So it would print a bit of fruit, subtract 1, go, 255, my goodness. Print another bit of fruit, subtract 1, print, subtract, and it would print 256 bits of fruit. If the 2 lines in the code had been the other way around, I very much paraphrased. Not the actual code. If they had that the other way around, it would have worked. But it didn't because of this. Right, so you hit the level, and it breaks. It prints fruit across the bottom. It prints across it again. It happens to blank out some sections. And because the original arcade machines were a CRT screen installed sideways, the coordinate system actually starts top right, but it thinks it's top left, and then going down this way is like scanning across the top left to right, but the whole thing's mounted in sideways. And it just starts printing the next bit of memory, right? So it goes through the entire table of fruit. It then just gets the next bit of binary, interprets it as if it's a bit of fruit, puts it on the screen. Next bit, puts it on the screen. And obviously you can see it goes through like letters and other stuff that's stored in the memory. By complete accident, it does print no! Sometimes the universe giveth. Right, and then you can never finish this level. Because when you start playing it, the game, like the levels don't end when you've eaten all the dots that are on the screen. It actually counts up for the number of dots, and it doesn't stop until you've eaten the number of dots equivalent to what they were at the beginning, except now half of them have been obliterated by the fruit, so you can't play this level. You're doomed to wander the post-apocalyptic wasteland. But on the upside, you can now go off the bottom and come back on the top, proving that the Pac-Man universe is toroidal. I know. That was bothering a lot of us. And then that's it. And then they never fixed it. Originally, the game was just meant to loop back to the beginning, right? Because the programmers didn't think anyone would ever get there. Deeply underestimated how much people were going to play these new video games. And when this was pointed out, they're like, we're just going to leave it. We're not going to fix it. And that's it. That's now the end of the game. You can play right through, and it just crashes, and you wander around till you get bored, and that's the end of it. And there's another famous game that this happened to. And so this was a game called Civilization that came out in the early 90s, and in it you play as a world leader, and you play against other world leaders from history to see who can have the best civilization. And one of them was Gandhi. And people noticed very early on, Gandhi surprisingly nuke happy. Now, the reason for this, because I wrote a book called Humble Pie, a comedy of maths errors, and I put this story in there, right? Since then, one of the people who worked on it, one of the lead guy, came out and said this is urban legend. It's not in there. Other programmers say it is. So at the moment, I don't know, and I haven't bothered looking it up, because if it's not true, I got to change the book. So the book is in a superposition state as we speak. So the story as it goes, allegedly, is when they were programming this, they gave all the different world leaders an aggression rating, which they were using an 8-digit binary number. And they gave Gandhi the lowest possible non-zero amount of aggression, like 1. But then, when you get to the nuclear age, they reduced everyone's aggression by 2 points. Which meant that Gandhi went from 1 to 0 to the maximum possible value. Nuclear tie, right? And then, when this was pointed out, did they fix it? No. They went all Pac-Man on it. They left it in. In fact, allegedly, they've deliberately put this into every game since. Tens of millions of copies have been sold over 3 decades now, which means there's a generation of young people who don't associate Gandhi with peaceful resistance. They associate him with an unprovoked nuclear strike. And if anyone has more information on that, there's no way I can find the source code. Anyway, apparently reverse engineering it, not a straightforward process. So if anyone's got more information about that, do see me afterwards. But other than that, that's my bit about 256 and things going wrong. Thank you very much.
I'm getting the feeling that things going wrong might be the main theme of these shows.
That's a good point. But some of us talk about things going wrong for other people. And some of us have things going wrong happen to us.
What are you trying to say?
Not naming names.
Matt, do you want to plug the night where you're recording the live version of Humble Pie for the people to download?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would, except it occurred in the past. So as we speak, it's being edited. And if people want to see it, I'm going to release... This is like the full stand-up special that the bit about the 256 was from. And you can go to my website, standupmaths.com. And you can either get it or you can pre-order it for all your mathematical disaster needs.
I mean, that was probably one of the more blatant plugs we've ever had on this podcast, and we've had a lot.
Oh, I thank you.
If you think that was blatant, wait until you hear these messages from our sponsor.
Hey, here's some detail. This episode is brought to you by Brilliant.org because the best way to learn anything is by doing it yourself. And Brilliant has loads of interactive courses across all things science, engineering, technology, and mathematics. I mean, the math courses are the best, obviously. But I hear people are into those other things as well. So there you are. And with Brilliant.org, you can learn them all. Like, if you want to learn more about algorithms, they have such a beautiful interactive course on algorithm fundamentals. You'll get to practice with real problem solving, and that helps you train your critical thinking and creative problem solving skills. And before you know it, you'll be insertion sorting and deferred accepting, both real algorithms, by the way, like nobody's business. So join the millions of people learning the Brilliant way. And if you go to brilliant.org/APOUD or just click the link in the description, the first 200 listeners will get 20% off an annual membership. So go, get started for free with Brilliant's brilliant interactive lessons.
All right, time for the final guest of this episode. It's the comedian behind hit podcast The Breakup Monologues and recent book by the same name. It's good. You should buy it. It's really good. She's here to answer the question, is monogamy dead? But in more detail than ever before, it's Rosie Wilby.
So I would like to tell you, just before we get into monogamy, I'd like to tell you where the inspiration for my new book, The Breakup Monologues, came from. And that was a few years ago when I got dumped by email. Oh, yeah, what do we think about that? I did feel much better about it, though, once I'd corrected her spelling and changed the font. Breakup in wingdings is far preferable, I think you'll find. So, yes, this came after my first book, which was called Is Monogamy Dead? And that was inspired when I heard that in many surveys, around 50% of people confess to cheating. And that got me thinking, if you are in a monogamous relationship and you're not cheating, better look closely at your partner, because simple math says it has got to be them. Cheer if you are in relationships. Yes, I love watching the body language between people who are together, especially if you see a couple where one of them is shorter than the other. I find myself fascinated and thinking, how did they get together? Did their eyes meet across a seesaw? And height difference is scientifically interesting. I don't know if you know this, because men often go for a woman who's shorter, women go for a man who's taller, evens out in heterosexual relationships. But did you know in the gay world, these desires that men and women have for a taller or shorter partner actually carry over? And it's quite hard for a short lesbian like me to catch the eye of a slightly taller lesbian, because she's looking for a taller lesbian, and it carries on and on. In an endless spiral. And in some ways, it's quite good two gay people can't actually create a baby together, because, think about it, runaway evolutionary theory would mean that lesbians would evolve and get taller and taller and taller and taller and taller and taller. Gay men would get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until we couldn't possibly all coexist in the same society, could we? It would be ridiculous. People would be like, oh, the lesbians are coming, run away. They're going to crush us with their giant Dr. Martin boots. Pick up that little teeny tiny gay man. He can't run very fast with those tiny legs. So although I am a mere silly comedian, I do fancy myself as a bit of a sex researcher, a bit like these two, Masters and Johnson, who among many discoveries were the first people to tell us that for a woman to have an orgasm, a penis was not necessary. Yes, a discovery that I think she looks slightly happier about. Than him. So I decided that I wanted to make my own discoveries. So I conducted my own survey of just 100 people, because that's how many you can do for free. And I wanted to find out what sort of relationships people are having these days on a sort of monogamy and polyamory spectrum. So I had most of my respondents defined as monogamous. Cheer if you're monogamous. And we've changed the meaning of it now, haven't we, really, from the original Greek, monos, gamos, one marriage for life, and now we sort of mean one marriage at a time. Sort of more serially monogamous, aren't we? And there were lots of people who'd responded to the survey who were polyamorous as well, having multiple ethically declared consensual relationships. Give me a cheer if you're polyamorous. Yes, they're always at the back. They're very busy. They had to sneak in late. There's got so many partners. No, but I love all the things that I've learned from my poly friends about the sort of honesty and respect, and also the idea that we are creating new language to recognise the fact that we have these new relationship forms, not necessarily these designated scripts about how we have to have a relationship. And my favourite new term is, if you feel you've reached your threshold of partners, you can say that you're polysaturated. It's really interesting because some of the other people that had responded to my survey were in an open relationship. And this was a kind of relationship structure quite familiar to me, because a lot of my gay male friends tend to have a primary partnership and then perhaps a looser sexual arrangement outside of that. And if you do look at studies about behaviours in different groups of people, you do often see gay men reporting the most sexual activity outside of a primary partnership, and lesbians reporting the least. But the problem with that is that lesbians do tend to break up much more frequently, as evidenced by the civil partnership dissolution figures here. And so perhaps it means that we reveal something about female sexuality. Maybe women are not the sort of guardians of long-term monogamy that culturally we perhaps think they are. And that was one of the key messages of a book that I read a few years ago. And it's by a chap called Daniel Bergner, called What Do Women Want? Because, of course, we do need a man to tell us. So I decided that maybe my version of monogamy and relationships and love and everything I'd been taught about those things was actually full of kind of assumptions and secrets and lies. So I decided to ask my survey respondents what other secrets they kept from each other. And my favourite one of these was third one down. Giving yourself the best portion of food. Cheer if you do that. Absolutely. So if you do want to choose monogamy, and I believe that you can much more happily choose something if you feel you can actively do so, knowing there are other choices and you can embrace it, not feeling like it's just this cultural default and the only way we can have relationships. But if you do want to choose monogamy, you have to answer the final question on my survey, which was, in a monogamous relationship, what counts as cheating? And we'll just whiz through these responses really quickly. And the majority of people, perhaps not surprisingly, did select having sex with someone else. But I mean, that's ambiguous. That's woolly, isn't it? I mean, we're not all Bill Clinton. One person had actually written in the comments box, in a car. Like, that makes a difference. I don't know. And then, not surprisingly, close behind that came kissing. Somebody else, cheer if you think kissing still counts as cheating. Yes, quite a few people, especially in this front section here. My favourite line in The Joy of Sex actually comes in the chapter about kissing, and it says, a good mouth-to-mouth kiss should leave its recipient breathless but not asphyxiated. And then we had a sort of more emotional spectrum of monogamy, falling in love with somebody else. Text or email flirting sort of comes under the banner of micro-cheating nowadays. Staying up all night talking to somebody was 31%. And then we had masturbating. I thought, oh, come on. Fantasizing about somebody else and looking at porn alone. I had to once do a child-friendly version of this talk, if you can imagine such a thing. And the organiser had changed that slide to looking at naughty pictures, sometimes moving. But everyone thought that was like moving emotionally, like had a really emotional story. Thank you so much. And, well, I love you lots, and whatever love is. It's obviously not exclusive because there's a lot of you. But see you all in the interval. Thank you very much.
Rosie Wilby, everyone!
So there you are, and if you're looking for more about Rosie's breakup monologues in podcast or book form, paperback out soon, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes.
And if you're near Brighton, she's doing a big breakup monologue show on the 22nd of May 2022 at the Brighton Spiegel tent. Links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, if you're listening to this in the future and you have missed that date, I'm very sorry about that, but don't worry, she's doing live shows and live versions of the podcast all the time. We've put her Twitter and Instagram links on the show notes, or just, go find her. You're good at this kind of stuff.
So there you go, that's the end of the show. And
yeah, it's not quite the end of the show. That was the last guest, but there's still one song, the one that I wrote specially for Matt, just to annoy him.
Love this song.
Yeah.
So much.
I mean, it was special.
Yeah. Right. So to give you a bit of background, on the first night, I got someone to hold Matt down in the green room while I went on stage and started the second half before he realised what was happening.
I should have been suspicious when someone seemed very interested to hear about my coffee-making ritual in the end.
Yeah. I know how to keep Matt in a room. And I played a song that I wrote specially for him. And we're going to play the recording now. Behold, a new song to the tune of Tom Lehrer's Elements, which is in itself written to the tune by Arthur Sullivan. These are all the details you need to know. May I present the numbers from 1 to 50 in rhyming order. There's 17, 28, 36, 34, 47, 33. Count the hours, 24. 38, 45, 29 and 43, 7, 8, 16, magic number, yes it's 3, 41, 13, 27, 35, 23, 15, Johnny says he's 5 alive, 19, 26, 31 and 22. Are people cheering on their favourite numbers? Did Matt set you up to this? 46, 14. All the answers 42. La 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 la. There's 44, 25, 37, 39, 32, 48, legs 11, 49, 2 and 4 and 6 and 9 and 18, 12 and 21, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 and end with number 1. Thank you. I haven't finished. Thanks for your applause. I cannot claim to be a hero. If Matt was here, he'd make me do it all again, but start from 0. La 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 la. Thank you very much.
Proving conclusively that rhyming order is the best order. And that's it for this podcast episode. We're all wrapped up and put a bow on it. There you go.
For the record, it is important what grind size your coffee is in a cafetiere versus an AeroPress. Right, so we're back to the regular format next week. So make sure you stick around. And to aid you in that, subscribe in whatever podcast app or system you use. And that way, you'll get our episodes as soon as they're out.
And in the meantime, if you want more detail about anything you've heard in this episode, links to the acts, free download of my numerical elements song, which can be used to taunt any mathematicians in your life. You can find all that in the show notes linked in the podcast description or over at festivalofthespokennerd.com/podcast.
And in case we haven't brought it up previously, this, a podcast of Necessary Detail, is part of the Acast Creator Network.
And if you want to get in touch, we're on all the social medias and we're on podcast at festivalofthespokennerd.com.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for now. Bye.
A podcast of Unnecessary Detail is made by Festival of the Spoken Nerd. That's Helen Arney, Steve Mould and Matt Parker. Our series producer is Lindsay Fenner, who also produced this episode. Our theme music is by Howard Carter, and we're proud to be part of the Acast Creator Network. Thanks for listening.